Hey, Corey. Good to see you again.
So great to be here. Thanks, Shane.
I've had so many people message me on Instagram and a lot of friends as well, but on Facebook, your the podcast that I did with you was by far the most popular. I think people really got a lot out of it. A lot of the other podcasts that I've done have been on performance, a lot of human optimization type of things, and I've had a couple other guests that talk about things in the contemplative world, but the podcast that I did with you was by far the most popular as far as what I've gotten messages about. People saying I really identified with what you guys were talking about, or I had no idea what the hell you guys were talking about, but it was really interesting.
Oh,
So I got a lot of that kind of stuff. So yeah, so here we are doing part two, and I read through some of your blogs again. If anybody wants to follow up onto more of Corey's work after this, he has an amazing blog where he really writes in long form about some of this internal process that we talk about. So just I'll put that in the show notes afterwards. I have it in the show notes on the previous podcast as well, but listening to that podcast will help give a little background too on Corey. We kind of discuss his life prior to what he's doing right now, living in a Zen monastery in Japan and all of his training. But today I want to just jump right into the juice of it. I wanted to talk to you about a subject that you write a lot about in your blog. It's something that you and I have talked offline about a lot, and that's relating. You have a line in one of your blog posts that says everything is relating, and you talk about this being the way to have a deep intimacy with life. And so I wanted to start off the conversation with just asking some basic questions. What does it mean to relate? And this is from Corey's blog post. What does it mean to relate? When we're with someone, what is actually going on? How can we really connect? What does this look like? What does it feel like? Why is it that we feel good with some people and bad with others? Why do we feel awful in certain situations? Other times we feel liberated. What is true intimacy? Not necessarily sexual intimacy, but to be truly close with somebody or something on a cellular level, to find a language, to thread the needle, to read the grid, to truly connect. And how do we live this way all the time and make it our own in our own creative, constant discovery? Corey goes on in another part of the blog post to say, when we're with people, it's an energetic, primal, deeper level of communication. He says, I believe this is why the most interesting and most powerful form of communication. It is the main conversation of our lives, and unless we know it and feel it, it runs our lives, and we are thrown about by people, by life. And this kind of just popped up to me. It's a Carl Jung quote that he says, it's a lot about the shadow. If we don't bring our own shadow to light, to consciousness, it runs our life in the background, and we end up calling it fate. But it's really running our lives. And so I was hoping you could just maybe dive into some of those. What is relating? What does it feel like to truly connect? And how do we stay touching that? How do we know when we're touching it with somebody? And then how can we let it guide our lives?
yeah, wow. Well, first I want to apologize because I have a little bit of a cold, but bear with me today. Um, well, I think many of us feel like we deeply want to connect with life, and we this is a I think everyone feels this, and everyone wants to engage with life, and certain people it's pretty loud. Certain Many of us, we go to monasteries to figure this out. We go to and to deeply explore that, and there are different ways to do that. I For me, it was a living in a monastery and having that as a medium to explore what it is to be with people, be with my body, be with objects like the flower, be with how can I physically be with things? And so part of what happens with this type of experiencing is that as you move into more of a felt sense of what is happening with your life instead of an intellectual sense of what is happening, you start to feel that my experience is like a texture of fabric, and where that texture meets other textures, okay, I can see that, oh, I can soften into um, uh, melting in with what I'm encountering. Okay, so let me backtrack. Being with the Roshi was a profound way for me to see what it is to relate with another person, and that was non-verbal, non-intellectual relating training. I think that's really what it is, and and so what you do is you begin to sense another person's energy field, if you want to call it that. You begin to sense another person's flavor, and in that you see, oh, I'm caught there. I'm caught there, and I'm pushing myself there. And so as we become more and more sophisticated with our own felt process of what's happening, we're able to remove those barriers we unconsciously have put up our whole lives. Okay, so and that's a lifelong exploration. But moving from this sense of life is a felt sense spectrum of feeling, and where I am, Corey, whatever that is, where that meets something else, maybe there's a sense that, oh, I'm encountering this person and I feel this coming at me, or I don't feel it, but I don't feel good. I feel off. I feel frustrated, or I feel the need to manipulate that person. And what happens is you get more sensitive, is that you get to see, oh, I that was all that was unconscious. That was unconscious. And I can feel into that, and I can become that. Where I am blocked, I can soften and become that and merge with it. Um, Not sure I'm being clear. Keep yeah,
Yeah, maybe just giving some of my own interpretation of it.
yeah,
As I've done my training throughout the years, it's very easy to be calm, to have a still, quiet mind when you're on the cushion, when you're on meditation retreat, when you're walking in the woods by yourself. But when we're met with other people, they push your buttons. They know how to, your triggers come up. And these little parts of our identity that are our little monsters that we try to keep hidden in the closet, they come out. And it's the best way to find out what these things are that are really blocking you from opening up. And
mhm,
so with me, the more I observe my internal listening, my internal world, the more I am sensitive to when those things come up. So I'm communicating with somebody, and for whatever reason, their energy kind of sets me off. They say something that makes me feel insecure, or I don't feel like I'm being recognized for my own um, what I think I should be recognized for, right? The ego comes out. And so these triggers come up and you can feel them. They usually manifest kind of physically. You feel blocked in a way. And that blocking feeling acts as a kind of alarm bell for me. It's an alarm that goes off that says, there it is. There it is. Soften into that. Go into that with that. And that's when I can let go, and my mind can relax. And then I can meet that person. Then I can, or I can try to
yeah, right,
meet that person at a deeper level.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, and often you get the sense that, oh, I'm very open. I'm very open, and then when you're with people, you feel, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed by that person, or that person bothers me. And the tricky part often is that the unconscious place is where you think you are open. So you
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm very open there, and then I feel like I get kind of beat up in that situation, or I feel like, oh, that person takes advantage of me, and the chances are it's like you're this shadow where you're unconsciously closed down, and so I think that we are like these kinked hoses. Okay, our experience is wide open, and what we
Mm-hmm.
do is, where we want to protect ourselves, we kink that hose and we lock it down, and we protect ourselves, And I think part of what happens as we get more and more comfortable with this internal process, that we're able to, in general, soften and allow this ourselves to be wide open. And we're afraid here. We're afraid here. Oh, I'm worried there. And over time, we see, oh, it's always better if I'm wide open. It's always actually better. I can encounter what's coming at me at the room when the person opens the door. If I'm wide open,
Mm.
I can feel them come in, and I'm not blindsided by them. I'm not caught off guard. They don't. Um, we talk about this kind of verbal tai chi. You'll be in a
Hmm.
conversation and you'll be talking with someone who's very good at manipulating. You'll be talking and um, you'll be, I feel really good, and then all of a sudden you leave and you feel like you got beat up. This is very common, and so there's a part of us that wasn't really conscious, and we got pushed. We got pushed. So as we become more conscious, then more able to feel this in a felt sense of relating with life, then we're able to feel those maybe sneaky pushes coming that we hadn't normally felt.
Right. Another thing that you and I talk about a lot when going into this subject is honesty
Yeah, right.
and being honest with ourselves. Um, it's be Over the years, I had realized slowly how dishonest I was with myself, and this dishonesty led me to being dishonest with others, and it affected the way I lived my entire life. It affected the way I talked with people, the way I moved, the way I interacted with the entire world. And when I say honest, I don't necessarily mean telling the truth about eating the last of the cookies. Of course, that's one level of it, but I mean being honest with really knowing what your internal world is, um and expressing that, and being honest with other people in the ways that are really important. And in some way, this honesty is kind of my guide when I'm relating with others, because I can feel if I'm being dishonest with myself or if I'm being dishonest with another person. A block comes up then too. And you and I have talked a lot about how art can be a form of this.
Mhm,
When you're in this deep honesty with yourself, when you're touching the deep part of yourself that is actual the truth of your being,
mhm. Yeah,
it's the muse. It's what guides your hand when you paint and when you write, and you let it flow through you. And in that space, that's when you're touching something precious. That's when you're touching something intimately, and that truth comes out, that honesty.
right.
And it's just been a big guide for my practice. And I don't hear a lot of it discussed, maybe just not in that language within contemplative meditation circles. But this honesty and being radically honest with myself and with others is what helps that relating too. It's kind of something that I'm checking in with. Is this true?
Mhm.
Am I being honest right now? Is there some energy in me that I'm holding in? And what is that? Where am I not being honest?
Yeah. Um, Sorry to go back to the Zen world, but there's this term sono mama, yes, and this
Oh,
means the thing itself. The thing
the thing
itself.
itself.
And I think through deeply practicing, we begin to touch the thing itself, and we start to know the thing itself. Well, I am being authentically engaged with the present moment fully, and that is, there's not an idea of that on top of it. That we're right on top of reality, and that starts to be we become this arrow of focus, being that more and more, and that doesn't really let us. It doesn't let us kind of mess around or leave it. So it becomes more, it's this guide that then starts to transform our whole personality, our whole way of being, so that we have to be honest with that all the time. We can't step out of the river once we're in that. And that it's like it transforms our cells. And when we're not being honest with this thing itself, this sonamama des, then we are we feel bad, we feel clogged up, we feel like we're misrepresenting what's happening, and so how can taking that to the body? How can the honesty be a body state? How can
Mm.
oh, I'm feeling this sense with my whole being of the thing itself, and if I feel that with my body, and if I don't feel it, I feel locked up, then my job is to find the thing itself through my whole being, through my body, where I'm blocked up. This is so it's a physical way to interact with touching authenticity. It's very powerful,
Hmm.
as opposed to like, I want to be good, I want to do the right thing. Of course, we do want to do that. But what happens is the more we touch this, the more it becomes an internal guide to touch the truth and live in this true place.
Right. Okay. You saying internal guide makes me have to bring up the koan practice that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. So, a little bit of background from my poor understanding of it. A koan. Well, I want you to. What is a koan, Corey?
Oh, it's just like a little story. It's like a little, it's, it's a little story, that has been passed down, often from China. And
Hmm.
you get this little koan, and it's often between two people, but not necessarily, and you get it and you're like, I don't know what they're talking about, I don't know what the question is, I don't know what the answer is. It's like it's a little, a random situation that you get, and then you're supposed to, when you get this, let me backtrack. You
Yeah.
do koans until you have haven't had a real breakthrough experience of this is breaking through the blue koan is often how we do that. And that breaking through the blue koan is a huge transformative process. And once you do that, you've touched this big mind. You've touched this
Hmm.
connection. And once you touch this real connection, then you're able to, that is like a key which allows you to interact with the whole tradition of Zen and the patriarchs and these koans. So
Hmm.
so you get this koan, and for me, what would happen is I would get a koan, and it would be, a situation between two people, and I would begin to feel things like in
Hmm.
my energy field would begin to feel disrupted, and I'd start to feel emotions. I'd start to feel um, confused, locked up. And the koan, for me, my process was to authentically feel into that, and then
Hmm.
as I did that, I began to get a sense of the situation in the patriarch state of mind they were guiding me to uh, merge with. Okay, so
Hmm.
Goso Hoen is the koan is about Goso Hoen, and you get to know Goso Hoen's state of mind through that koan. So you because you've touched this real place, this deep place, you're able to sense into it. You get like an odor. Oh, that's interesting. What is that? I'm gonna follow that, and it starts to transform your body, transforms your energy field, and you go see the Roshi 10 times, and he says, that's awful, get out of here. And then you go in one day, and he says, and he looks at you, and he sees you've transformed. You become Goso Hoen. Goso Hoen walked in the door, and he says, that sucks, but it's a little better,
Right. Well, maybe let's back up.
Yep.
Um, so when the Roshi, your teacher, gives you a koan, he'll give you this koan,
Yeah.
and you'll have to go to this. And correct me where I'm wrong, but you'll have to go to this big book of all of these what are called capping phrases, and it's essentially training you in this touching your internal compass, your internal guide to touch the mind of these past Zen masters, these past patriarchs,
Yes.
um, by being in connection with that, something in you starts to guide you to what the correct capping phrase is. And so you'll go in, and it's not like they make sense. It's not like it's something that would be obvious to an average person. Um, like a very popular koan that people might be familiar with is what is the sound of one hand clapping, right? Not that that's one that might be given by a teacher, but it's just a common koan. It's like a riddle. It doesn't really make sense. And so these capping phrases, it's not like you're looking for something that quote unquote makes sense. And you go to the Roshi and you give him a response that you found. You think it's pretty good. And he's like, nope, that's not it. You keep going back. Nope, that's not it. And slowly you're refining this intuition, this inner knowing,
Yes.
and merging your mind with the mind of awakened beings.
Yes.
And through that, you're able to find the right answer. And when you like you've explained to me this before, you walk into the room and the Roshi basically already knows that you've got it. You say it and he knows that you've touched this.
Yes.
And so that's how you're developing this internal
Yes.
compass, this thing.
Yes. Yes. And I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. So
Yeah, and correct me where I was wrong. Yeah.
Sanzen, I love it. No, Sanzen is when you go see the Roshi individually. Okay, you go see him.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was a small uh, kind of leftover kind of samurai archaic person who lives in
Yeah.
Japan, and the last monk, and you go see him, and it's an under the table exchange. So you go in, and the Roshi is offering his state of mind, and when you go there, you can't really feel that. You don't know what's going on. You have no idea what the game really is, and over time,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to meet his state of mind, and you start to transform through that. That is nonverbal. It is a cellular change that happens with the student and the teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
very intimate, not sexually, but very intimate. And through that, over time, you start to know his state of mind, and you become his state of mind. So that is a way of guiding the student to open up. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so that skill that you attain through merging with something you don't understand. This is a huge skill in this practice. So, so then you have this skill of merging in a way that is non-mental, and becoming what's in front of you. And and then once you get to these koans, you have the skill of being able to touch into this deep aspect that you don't understand, and you become more and more uh, agile in this way of
Mm-hmm.
interacting. You become more and more able and confident to give up the calculating aspect and touch this huge field of openness and connection that you
Mm-hmm.
opened up with the Roshi. And so with the koan, that's what happens is it forces you to let go of your mental aspect and touch this true place over and over and over and over and over, so that you're not, you know, you're not stuck there. You're not stuck there. So you become much more like malleable, like a bamboo. And okay,
Mm-hmm.
you get this koan, you do this koan. The Roshi says, that's not that great, but bring in a go or a capping phrase. And
Mm-hmm.
so you've touched the flavor of this unknown um, aspect of relating with these patriarchs with life. And then the Roshi says in this capping phrase, and you look through this book, it's 2 a.m. You're like you're up, and it's insane, and you're going through this book, and no rider above, no horse below. What the heck is that crap? And you're
Right. Right.
eating it, this asshole, and you take in 5 koans, and he laughs at you. He laughs at you.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day you're going through, and your body breaks out in sweat. Oh, uh, you touched something. You felt a connection that you hadn't quite gotten as deep with the koan. Through the capping phrase, it got you get further in. You were further into
Mm.
this deeper way of relating. And so you got a hold of the patriarch a little further. You got a hold of this
Oh.
further. You've touched it in a deeper way. And you take that in, and the Roshi says, not bad. and then he gives you another koan,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's this way of, so much of what we think in life is we're there is life, and I'm going to reach across and I'm going to figure it out. And in this practice, it teaches you to go into this complete unknown and learn how to function there. And that is a huge, vast um, way of connecting with um, everything in this way. So I think for me, I took that training, and then I needed a way to keep interacting in my life that way.
Mhm.
Um, and I assume, let me hear what you have to say, and I assume you want to go there.
No, I please continue. That was the explanation that I was looking for.
Yes. So for me, I needed a way to it was like I had this secret way of relating with people, with life. And then I left training, and I needed a way to carry that into sharing with others, this great gift of relating.
Mhm.
And so I went into, for me, I went into like touch therapy, and that was a very simple physical way laboratory for me to interact with people in a simple way. If I
Mhm.
came back and I started to talk about things, and I would feel kind of awful, like, oh, I misrepresented, I was off of the truth there, wasn't really honest in that. And so for me,
Mhm.
it's a really good medium to, in a simple way, touch bodies and feel if I could find that authentic connection. And when I did that,
Mhm.
people's body would start to heal. They would start to heal, and we had touched this truth, and we had met the moment and allowed it to transform us. Just very much like, for me, the sense of the koan, the sense of sun, and so I've been doing that in various ways, finding ways. Also, my blog has been this way of zeroing in on expressing something true over and over. If I write something and I feel kind of off, I feel like I'm not really representing, then I have to I'll toss that one out and I'll touch something true. So it's
Mm.
been a real practice.
So when you're writing, are there ever times that, and I say this because I experience it with my own writing, uh, because we talk a lot about similar topics, and I know the language in my head that I want to use to express it.
Yeah.
And so I'll sit down and start writing, and I'll realize that in some way I'm forcing something. It's not coming out in this really natural it's coming from me, from my identity, and my identity wants you to think that I'm special. It wants you to think that I know something important,
Yeah.
and I'm in this high
Right.
understanding, and so I'm getting in the way of it somehow, and I can't see how I'm doing it until eventually I'm two paragraphs in and I'm just like, that I don't feel right. I don't feel honest in myself.
That's right.
And I'll start over, or I won't even write at all, just give up that day. And I'll wait until it just flows out of me and I feel like I'm being honest. I'm being honest, and
Yes.
then it feels right.
I love it. Love it. Yeah. For me, a lot of this feels like in it feels like there's the truth, and I'm climbing through these brambles of, like, oh, there's this um, nonsense in the way, and so if I'm doing that, then I back out, and I allow find a way for this energy field to clear, and that's my process. I find a way to
Mm.
open up, um, and unify, and bring all the horses in one direction, and then the writing should sort of drip with this. It should be just an
Mm.
overflowing of this, and if it's not, then it doesn't feel good. Like, you've had profound experiences, and I I think that's what this is about. It's we align with that, and then our expression can come through that. And if we don't, then it will feel schmarmy, kind of feel awful, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yes, yes. And I would say, for me, it took 15 years, 10, 15 years of like, maybe 10 years of feeling like um, I was just not really able to let that flow out of me. So I was really,
Hmm.
I had to kind of um, they call this ripening the sacred embryo. I had to kind of back off and let myself start to harmonize for a long time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's touching upon what I was saying with the honesty is when we're relating with others, when we're doing our art, whether it's writing or painting, and we feel that we're not touching that authentic part of ourselves. That's what I'm talking about not being honest. That's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about lying about taking the last cookie. I'm talking about that when you feel blocked from life,
Right.
when you feel like there's some kind of resistance in you. You can't name it, you can't touch it, but it's there. Um, and and really, the only way that I've come to I guess ripen in my own way to open up is to just identify that that's what's happening, to identify it and then relax into it and allow myself to just open up.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
I mentioned to you that I've been thinking a lot about identity lately.
Right.
How it, identity is such a I like to use the word identity over ego, actually,
Yeah.
because identity, I identify as a man. I identify as a person who meditates. I identify as being spiritual. I identify as a person that likes being physical and athletic and all of these things. But I also have identities that aren't the well. I wouldn't want to talk about them, or I wouldn't want to tell other people about them.
Right.
Maybe I think that I'm a really good person, or just kind of I don't know, big headed,
Right.
you know. and and so when I feel that by opening up more and more, I'm able to see these parts of my identity, and it just starts by seeing them, by seeing that that's what I'm doing, that's when I'm relating with somebody. Oh, I'm being smart Shane right now. I'm in this teacher, I'm trying to be in a teacher position with you, or oh, I'm trying to get something from you. Maybe it's at work, and I want to a position or a raise, and so I'm trying to manipulate and strategize this situation to get what I want, or to be seen the way I want to be seen.
Yes.
And the more I open up, the more I can just see I'm doing that. And it's a little bit of a mind game at that point. You see it and you have a choice to make, because you're used to saying, well, I still want this thing. I'm still a human being, and I still have ambition. I want to be loved, you know? And so honesty becomes a choice at that point.
Yes.
And it's a choice in just letting go and just falling into no identity. And the more I've made that choice and fallen into it, my life has blossomed.
Right.
All of a sudden, life starts to give me more. It starts to open up more and more, and I open up more and more to it.
Yes. Yes. Love it. Love it. Um, yeah, you see people who start off in practice and they kind of have all these contracts they think everyone has signed about them. Like, well, Corey's adorable. Corey is no matter
Right.
what. Corey's a good guy. No
Yeah.
matter what, he's the smart one. You know what I mean? He's a smart
Hmm.
one.
Right.
And
Yeah.
get around pretty authentic people. They have zero interest in that. And
Hmm.
I think as we go further and further into that, we see, oh, that contract I had was that was really limiting me.
Hmm.
It felt like that was actually that stuck place in my relating. That contract I had
Hmm.
about myself was a physically or a texturally dense place in this field of Corey, and so it prevented me from interacting in a wide open way with life. These
Hmm.
things I put down there, these dense spots in my relating with others. Yeah, It's very interesting, and when you see people who have gotten pretty free of that, it's really shocking. Like you meet someone who's gotten kind of free of that, and you know how when you meet people, well, that's that kind of guy, that's that kind of woman. You know, they're this kind of.
Mm.
And when you meet someone who's not really in that game, it's very interesting because you can't pin them down. Oh, that
You in
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want you to talk about this because I it's such an interesting point. I think we've all met one of those people in our lives at least, and it's a little bit frustrating.
It's,
It's a little bit frustrating, and it's very man, it's attractive. Like you're drawn to those people because those people are all free in the way that you aren't,
yeah.
and we see that freedom in them. They don't have the freedom of needing to be an identity, and they just can act so much more spontaneously.
Right.
And that's in Buddhism, that's where it's taught that that's where true wisdom comes from. It's spontaneous. It's not from the conceptual mind. And when you're in this open space, when you're free, when you don't have all of these spheres, these layers of your identity that's somehow filtering
Yes.
all of your actions,
Right.
then that spontaneous wisdom just bursts out, and you know exactly what to do and what to say. And
Yes.
so you meet these people and you're like, holy shit,
Yes.
how do I be like them?
Yes.
But then you're frustrated because they're showing you how free you are not.
Yes. They sure are. Right.
Hmm.
Right. I love it. Living without a filter. Very interesting. How can we live without that filter, that filter, that filter? And you really do see people and they shine and it's counterintuitive, because well, for me to shine, I've got to be doing it. It's got to be that,
Hmm.
I have Corey has loaded himself with energy so much that he is just shining into and everyone will know it. And
Yeah.
instead, what you see is like people who they've let go of that need to be that or to shine or to manipulate or to control, and then they're without that filter, they're shining, and it's
Yeah.
shocking to see. um, and sorry to go back to the Roshi for a second, but to take that further, like the Roshi would physically look, you would look at him, you'd look away, and you'd look again, and he would be physically, visually different. Like
Mhm.
we can keep going further with this, like for forever with our process of like letting these filters down or letting this, like, oh, I'm free, I'm open, and then I'm not. I'm free, I'm open, and then I'm going to lock down here. I'll lock down here. I'll lock down here. This makes me feel safe, and you see someone who's really, really letting go into this huge mind, this place of letting go, and it's a physical expression. And you know, a lot of us we feel like, well, I'll be open and then I'll control. I'll be open and then once I feel
Yeah.
it, then I'll close down because I got to be careful. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's really interesting to see that when someone's in this different place.
Hmm. I always liked in one of your blog posts, you write about how it when you were around the Roshi, it would feel like reality was following him around.
Yeah, yeah, yep, 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 exactly, yep.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so this is the way these masters are working, the way we can work as we go further and further into this unifying ourselves, not locking ourselves down, being in this open place, is that so when we do things, we're expressing this oneness. um, uh, One example I like to give about this is that our whole being is like a cart with 10 horses. I've said this before, but
Hmm.
and what this is like is, well, I'm going forward, but part of me is going back, part of me is going to the side, part of me is wanting to go up, whatever, and so I'm
Hmm.
divided. I'm a divided field of energy, and we've all felt that. We've all felt resistance in ourselves. I want to do this, but I really want to do that, and what I think real training does is it and we see that this is trying to happen. This oneness of all the horses going in one direction starts to become more and more what we are. We're this expression of oneness. Like when we move our hand, it's an expression of all the molecules going in one direction. When we
Mhm.
walk, where everything is coming with us, we're not there fighting against the stream of reality. Um, that
Mhm.
this is people know about this, but this is what calligraphy is about. Actually, calligraphy is about expressing oneness. And so, like,
Mhm.
if someone is very skilled, you can see that the ink is all traveling in oneness. And like, if you
Mhm.
visualize the molecules, they would all be going in this one direction. So
Mhm.
so it's an expression of this oneness. Um,
Mhm.
that's what these rule masters are like.
So Corey is pointing to a calligraphy on his wall, and I'm assuming you're talking about Japanese calligraphy in particular, right?
Yes, yes,
Right. So so in Japanese calligraphy, a teacher would a lot of times. So I took a Japanese calligraphy course in San Francisco a few years ago, and the teacher would just take this big brush of paint and just slap it down on this giant board of paper and create it, in a moment of absolute stillness in his mind, create just the perfect ideograms, which are Japanese characters for different things. And and so people, especially that have a very trained eye in this type of calligraphy, can look at this teacher's calligraphy versus me, that for all intents and purposes it might look very similar, but they can see, oh no, this teacher, his mind was it was still, it was touching this thing, uh this big mind
yes,
when he did it. And so all of the molecules in his hand, like you said, everything was a perfect stroke, and that was that now that's captured, it's represented in this art form.
right,
And somebody with a skilled eye, that especially somebody that can also do this,
right,
is able to see that. It's able to see the paint moving in the perfect direction, every single molecule aligned.
right,
And there's the beauty in that.
right, right. And I think again, a lot of people I think on this who listen to this may be athletes, and they know about the zone. They know about, and
Hmm.
certain people can go into this place of unity, of bringing themselves into a place of oneness in athletics, like flow states, etc. And like I would say those often are limited to that activity. Okay. But
Hmm.
so say Michael Jordan can go into a place where he is willing the game to go as he wants it to. Everything is under his control, right? And the shot, the rim is 3 feet wide, and when he shoots, and everything
Hmm.
slows down, um, and what I saw with the Roshi, and then when I saw with possibilities through my own training, my own people I was training with, you see, people can begin to be like that all the time. They can be in this
Hmm.
place of unity with what they're doing all the time. Um,
Hmm.
and that's what it's kind of about is that sense of merging and becoming what's happening. So the Roshi walks down the hallway, and it's like emptiness is chasing him around, and you see that in people who are really developed. They're bringing a field of oneness with them,
Hmm.
and we can do that.
So I think a lot of people hear this and think it's so exotic.
Yeah, right.
It's so it's so far away from my ordinary everyday life, and bringing it, using the example of the zone. I think a lot of people can identify with that. They've been in that state before where they feel like they've kind of disappeared,
Yeah,
and this thing is just happening. And so we're talking about that, but I like to also separate the zone from what we're talking about a little bit, in that
good.
in the zone there is there's still an ignorance.
right?
you don't you don't know how you're doing that, and the clarity isn't there. This knowing, this there's not a familiarity with it. It's
Right.
very hard to describe, but there is a difference.
Yes.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about the difference between the zone and actually authentic, genuine awakening.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think just the thing about these practices is that they give us an internal language to be able to feel this stuff more and more and more and more. So
Hmm.
that's why partly we do these body practices all the time, is because they in ourselves we begin to see how to change all the time. I i can feel where I'm stuck. I can feel physically where I'm stuck. I can feel that. I can feel where the room where I'm relating where I'm stuck. We do that over and over and over and over until what we are is this transformation process all the time. And that is a
Hmm.
type of clarity um, comes through that. It blossoms out of that, and that connection with this. Um, I talked about 10 horses, but as we go deeper, it's like 1,000 horses. This connection of
Hmm.
opening is moving through us, and it's guiding us more and more all the time. So where I'm so my job is to stay connected in this place of authenticity, this honesty, and through that this oneness emerges out of me all the time. So
Hmm.
that's it's a body practice. It's a body transformation cellular process.
Yeah, it's interesting in specifically the tradition that you come from, which is the Rinzai tradition in Zen Buddhism. There is a saying that I've come across a couple of times, which is that awakening has to penetrate the bones.
Yeah, yeah,
That anything that is just a conscious,
yeah,
if it's just in the head,
yep,
it hasn't truly um, it's not a full awakening. And I don't want to necessarily use the term full awakening because that is a very rare thing.
right,
But the point is that the body is part of this. That in I'm thinking right now of this might help people understand why the body is part of this. If anyone's ever read the book The Body Keeps the Score, or any of these books about trauma,
mhm,
so much of the time our body protects us from traumas that have happened in our life and stores that information in the body. It's not in the conscious mind, because if it was in the conscious mind all the time,
mhm,
you wouldn't be able to live. You're in a constant state of fight or flight.
right,
So it stores that information in the body. The problem is, in modern society, we have lost touch with the primal parts of us that know how to release that. Animals will shake uncontrollably after being chased
mhm,
in some kind of life or death situation with a predator. Um, when we release emotions, a lot of times we understand how we cry and we'll scream. There's all these physical, very physical ways that the body releases trauma.
mhm,
And
mhm,
and so understanding that this information is in the body,
mhm, mhm,
the like you've talked about how the Roshi has said, the body already knows how to birth true wisdom. So just in the same way that these things that are holding back are stored in the body, awakening is already alive in the body.
mhm,
And and so it is definitely very much a part of this process.
mhm,
So becoming very very familiar with
mhm,
how we're feeling, what our emotions are, what is our heart feeling,
mhm,
um, and not trying to put it in, not putting any label on it, is it good or it's bad, but just feeling, and letting that open up into the environment, like you say, being the room,
mhm,
um,
mhm,
and then relating with others and all of this. It becomes this huge process that it does, the mind starts to get bigger then, and it becomes still.
mhm,
And I think that that is also a way that in modern psychology that isn't discussed. They talk so much about just the body storing all of this trauma, but just recognizing these feelings and just being in the body has this way of releasing all of this tension,
mhm,
and that we're walking around with. It's it's controlling the way we talk with others, the way we move, the way we interact with the world. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. You know, I went to Japan and I had a lot of feeling of life being something I was had to kind of fight against, had something I needed to
Hmm.
overcome. And as I went deeper into my practice, I saw that there was always something there trying to shine out, something deeper. And this, I started to get a sense of this great life energy. And this great life energy was something I might call grace that was
Hmm.
shining through. And that wasn't anything I could understand. There was
Hmm.
well, anything that I feel like is coming from a place of understanding, mentally understanding is not it. So in
Hmm.
practice diving further into this unknown, into this what is shining through that's not mental, that's huge and vast. And then we start to our faith starts to change from I'm a person that needs to fight with reality to a person that sees, oh, reality is moving through me and there's something much bigger that's guiding me all the time. Bigger. It's vast. It's um, could be God, could be grace, could be this great life energy, the universe, and and that faith starts to change how we interact with everything, and that becomes the baseline of kind of what we are, and that so I think that's partly the difference between someone accidentally falling into a place of oneness when they're doing things to someone who their whole being has been transformed to a receptive expressing person, you know.
Hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. Um, well, I think that is pretty much the best way we could end it. Corey, thank you so much. If anybody wants to look into Corey's writing, or he also has a Facebook group that does two types of practices, if I could describe them. One is non-directed body movement, and he guides people in this process of being in the body and kind of just letting it open up on its own, because the body knows how to do this, and over time letting go. And so he works in this non-directed body movement, and also teaches uh, what's called Zhan Zhuang, and it is not spelled the way it sounds, but it's a qigong movement. And if you Google the word standing like a tree, you'll see what this looks like. It looks like you're holding a big ball and you're kind of squatting down a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's been a part of since I've met Corey, it's been a big part of my practice, just as my physical practice,
Yeah.
where I'm able to find parts of my actual physical being where I'm tight and tense, and again, kind of releasing this parts where I need to soften. And that opens up the mind. It's all part of this big process. And so Corey has a very beautiful, interesting, unique way of going through all this stuff. I love listening to it. Sometimes I've been on the groups and I haven't even been doing it because I've had to do something with work, and I'll just listen because it's such a beautiful way to describe it. So he guides people through these two processes. He has a Facebook group for that, and then he has his Zen embodiment blog. If you just Google Corey Hess, Coreyhess on Google, he is like one of the top search results for that, and you'll be able to find him. So, Corey, as always, I appreciate you being on here. It's so much fun talking about this stuff. I don't hear anyone else talking about these types of subjects, and so it's so refreshing to hear it. Your blog is beautiful. It's very inspiring, and you can tell by reading it that you definitely have ripened in your practice. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for having me and discussing this stuff that no one talks about, and
Yeah,
the enigma. I
Yeah.
write the blog because I don't see anything like this. So,
I know.
I know.
Yeah.
And I
It's
hope
beautiful.
we've tried to touch a little bit of this stuff today. It's very difficult to talk about, so I appreciate it if you all listen.
Mhm.
It's very difficult to talk about this. So, yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And there is, I just want to add one thing. There is a book that Corey recommended to me that I've started reading a few days ago that's really good. It's about the blind man. What's the name of it again?
And there was light, Jacques
And there was light.
Jacques Lussaire, and that's a I love that book because he's never done any kind of Zen anything.
Right.
He became blind at age 8, I think, and his internal
Hmm.
world um, like imploded. And his I would say his way of describing how he interacts with reality is I feel very akin to that, very similar feeling.
Mm. Yeah, it's a beautiful book. I'm only about a quarter of the way through, but it's exactly what Corey. And when we say, and then there was light, he's not, he's blind,
Yeah.
and he's talking about this internal light,
Yes.
this seeing through this internal light. So it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a great way to dive a little bit more into what we're talking about. Again, very difficult
Yeah.
topic to explore, and I think we're trying to develop a language around it. So
Yes. Yes.
that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
So again, Corey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much. Okay. Cool.